It was about 20 years ago, the last time I preached on Psalm 100. And this time, and digging new into this wonderful psalm, there was one scene that kept popping into my mind. It was when my Christian friends in Myanmar celebrated receiving the Bible translated into their own language. What celebration! Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, is a poverty-stricken nation. It's a war-torn nation. It is a nation in which Christians are severely persecuted. In Myanmar, there's so much darkness, little happiness. But when my Christian friends received the Bible in their own tongue, in their own language, they made a slate of wood, put the Bible on the slate, and then they attached poles to that slate of wood. And then they paraded the Bible from their home village to the next village, which was 16 miles away. The entire 16-mile journey, the people are singing, praising God with all their hearts. Given the dire conditions in Myanmar, it's not uncommon for Christians there to be asked, "Why do you sing?" And this morning we're turning the question around. Why do we sing? We don't know when Psalm 100 was composed, nor do we know who composed it, but we do know that this psalm follows a distinct collection of psalms called the Royal Psalms, Psalm 93 through Psalm 99. And all of these psalms highlight God's kingship. They emphasize that the Lord is king over all. And I'd like for us to see that on the screen just briefly, the Psalms listed. Psalm 93, the Lord reigns. He is robed in majesty. Psalm 94, rise up, O judge of the earth. Psalm 95, for the Lord is a great God and a great king above all gods. Psalm 96, say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Psalm 97, the Lord reigns, let the earth rejoice. Psalm 98, make a joyful noise before the King, the Lord. Psalm 99, the Lord reigns, let the peoples tremble. These psalms crescendo in praise before the King, leading to the climax of Psalm 100. And in Psalm 100, we need to hear the universal call for joyful thanksgiving to the King. Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. In ancient times, enthroned kings were received with shouts and joy and singing. An example of this is King Solomon when he was enthroned. Just listen to this. Then they sounded the trumpet, and all the people shouted, "Long live King Solomon!" And all the people went up after him, playing pipes and rejoicing greatly, so that the ground shook with the sound. Great rejoicing. Rejoicing by all, except those who were captured enemies of the king. For them, the rule of the king meant either harsh, cruel labor or death. But listen how different this psalm is. This is a call of the greatest praises to the greatest of all kings. And this call extends to all the earth. not only the people of Israel, not only God's people, the Israelites, but even the enemies of God's people. All the earth are to make noise and gladly submit before the King of Kings. Indeed, this is an invitation to lost sinners, a glorious invitation. I became convicted, friends, in studying the past couple of weeks on this psalm. I became convicted that my witness to others is too often too defensive or too nonchalant, too boring. The message we have is a glorious message. It's a message that goes to all the earth, all people. A glorious message that the King came to give abundant life to people. The glorious message is that the King came to rescue us from damnation. The message is that the King of Kings, rules over all things, and therefore all are to gladly, joyfully submit to him. But therein is the problem, isn't it? Because people by nature cannot bow before God. People by nature rebel against God. People by nature make themselves to be God. People cannot joyfully worship the King of Kings on their own. The call for all the earth to joyfully sing is like that call in the New Testament, where that man Lazarus was dead for 4 days, and the call, Lazarus, come out. Lazarus couldn't come out. He was dead. And the Bible teaches us that we were all dead in our trespasses and sins. By nature, people can't come to God, but this is our testimony, isn't it? Whether you received Christ at age 3 or whether you received him at 93, this is our testimony. I could not come to the King, but the King came to me. The King came to me. That's so wonderfully expressed in Psalm 35. Psalm 35, verse 5 and 10. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Blind people can't see. Deaf people can't hear. But the King comes. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return and come to Zion with singing. Yes, the invitation goes to all. Worship the King of Kings. And that leads us to consider the key to joyful thanksgiving before the King. And the key is knowing God and belonging to him. Verse 3, Psalm 100, verse 3, know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Psalm 100 has 7 imperatives, that is 7 verbs of command, and the middle one is know. That middle one is different from the other 6. The other 6 commands all have to deal with liturgical action, acts of worship. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, enter his gates with thanksgiving, and so forth, so forth. But the middle one, know. We have to know the one we worship. Central to doing is knowing. We have to know who God is. And so parents, here again we have a reminder of the importance of teaching your children sound doctrine. The importance of teaching them to meditate on the truths of the Bible, which reveal the God to whom we are to give complete worship and praise. We need to know him. And what are we to know according to this psalm? We are to know that it is he who made us. Is it the idea that we have to know that God created us? Well, certainly that's included in it, but this particular word is expressing something different. We have to know it's the God who made us. A God remade a people for himself. He purchased a people for himself. He purchased the people of Israel. He purchased you and me. He made us. And so what is all the earth to know? What are all the people of the earth to know? They are to know that God alone saves. God alone, the King, regenerates hearts. Only God can do it. And so our testimony is a good testimony. The bad news is that no one by nature can worship the King. The good news is that the King who commands complete worship is the King who changes hearts from rebellion to joyful submission. That's the good news. And that's our testimony. We are made. We are a people who have been redeemed. We are people who have been rescued by the King from our sin and from condemnation. But there's more. Not only does the King rescue us, not only does he save you and me from condemnation, but the King made us to be his very own. We belong to God. I love how the Heidelberg Catechism begins. What is your only comfort in life and in death? That I am not my own, but belong in life and in death, soul and body, to my faithful Savior, Jesus Christ. That's a beautiful expression. But we need to see the beauty of Psalm 100, the beautiful expression. Because here we have Hebrew poetry, so wonderfully artistic. In Hebrew poetry, there is an artistic feature by which the author places the central thought literally in the center of the song. And Psalm 100 is an example of this. There are 41 Hebrew words in this psalm. The center one, with 20 words before it, 20 words after it, the center word means we are his. What's the key for joyful thanksgiving to God? Exuberant praise. What's the key? Knowing God and knowing that we are his. We belong to him. We belong to the King of the universe. We are his. Now, friends, we have to understand that everybody belongs to someone. The question isn't if you belong to someone. The question is, who do you belong to? And Jesus made that very clear. He rebuked the religious teachers and he told them that they belonged to the father of lies, the devil. So you either belong to the Father of grace or the father of lies. One or the other. I read an article last week by Jerry Coyne. He's a renowned atheist. It was a sad article. He comes under the label of new atheists. New atheists are those who not only deny the existence of God, but they make it a point to publish articles and to publish books that attack religion. Jerry Coyne is one of them. This article was so sad because Jerry claims to be enlightened, but in fact, the man is blind and he's enslaved to darkness. My heart went out to him when I read the article. It's interesting that a lady by the name of Hirsi Ali, an African woman, very intelligent, she too belonged to these new atheists. She wrote many attacking articles against Christianity. But just last year, this lady publicly announced that she was now a Christian. And this is what she said. Life without any spiritual solace is unendurable. I'll say it again. The question is not if you belong to someone, it's who you belong to. It's the difference between belonging to the father of lies and under the tyranny of the father of lies, or it's a life of peace and joy under the rule of the good shepherd who laid down his life to bring in lost sheep. That's the difference. The key to joyful thanksgiving is knowing the King and belonging to him. And congregation, we need to get this. The more you are his, the more joy you have. Hear it now. The more you surrender to the King of Kings, the more joy you will have. The more aspects of your daily living that are committed to King Jesus, the more joy you will have. Jesus said it. In fact, it's said in each of the four Gospels. Whosoever loses their life for my sake will find it. The more by grace you are given over to the King of Kings, the more joy you have. And I don't know about you, but if you're like me, we need to hear that over and over again to get it. We need to hear it over and over again. And it's wonderful that Psalm 100 repeats the call for thankful, joyful thanksgiving to the King. It's a repeated call. Listen to verses 4 and 5. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him, bless his name, for the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Children and young people, I want to tell you that as a young boy, I attended a Christian school, and our teacher set it up so that each student had to take a turn of reading a scripture passage before the noon lunch hour. We had to take a turn, and we could pick the passage we wanted to read. I hated reading before the class. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I found Psalm 117. 2 verses. And that was great. Until too many of my classmates did the same thing. Then the teacher ruled out Psalm 117. And then I resorted to Psalm 100. I had 5 verses. And I suppose I could have tried to get by with reading just half of it. Because when you look at the psalm carefully, the second half is a basic repeat of the first half. So can we skip the second half? Oh, no. When something is repeated in the Bible, it means it's very important. Exuberant worship before the king is extremely important. Extremely important. Since God's love endures forever, why should our love become stagnant? Right? Our music director, Paul Bertucci, almost every week sends out an email highlighting an aspect of our worship the coming Sunday. And it's all by way of encouragement so that we may come ready to offer exuberant praise before our King. And our praise is not only for Sundays. The beauty of what we're doing today is offering praise to our King. And he's so gracious to us that when we do this collectively and we're offering joyful praise to him, then we in that process of giving praise by his grace, he nourishes us so that we can go out throughout the week giving praise in all that we do to the King. And that's why friends, you have to do your very best to come here every Sunday. You really do, because every one of us needs that. Every one of us needs to be nourished by God's Spirit so that throughout the week we may bless his name. Give thanks to the Lord, bless his name. We need to do that throughout the week, and Sunday worship service inspires us to do that. You got to do your best in being here every Sunday. You really do. Years ago, I read a story about a medical missionary in a remote region of India. And they had a lot of blindness in that region. And this medical missionary was a skilled surgeon that used a procedure to restore sight. And in that region, their dialect did not have a word for thank you. But they had an expression which meant, I will proclaim your name. So they didn't have a word that said thank you, but they would say to the doctor, I will proclaim your name. In other words, they went out and proclaimed the goodness of that doctor to others. How much more you and I are to proclaim the goodness of our King to others? How much more we are to exalt his name. We are called to say thank you and how we worship joyfully on Sundays. That's how we say thank you. We are called to say thank you in how we do our daily work and our daily careers. We are called to say thank you by sharing the gospel with people who do not know. We are called to say thank you by promoting righteousness in a community so divided and so filled with hate. That's how we say thank you to the Lord, by promoting righteousness in our community. We say thank you to the Lord by how we interact with other people. We say thank you through our entire lives, offered to the King of Kings. And what really impacted me in the study of this psalm was this. If Old Testament saints were called to give thanks to the Lord, how much more Doug Aldrink and all of you are called to give thanks? And just think about that with me. We don't know how much the first listeners of Psalm 100 knew. We don't know when it was composed. But how much did they know? I wonder, were they familiar with the prophets? Like, were they familiar with the prophet Zechariah? Listen to these words, Zechariah 9. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. His rule shall be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. Did those first listeners of Psalm 100, did they know? Did they know that prophecy? I don't know. Did they know about Isaiah? Did they know what God said specifically to the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 49, verse 6? God said to Isaiah, "It is too light a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to bring back the preserved of Israel." Get it? Isaiah, it's too small to bring back Israel. I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. Did the first listeners of Psalm 100 know that? Were they familiar with that prophecy? Were they familiar with the prophecy of Isaiah 52, verse 7? How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. Did those first listeners know? And even if they did, even if they were familiar with the promises of the prophets, they didn't know what you and I know. They did not. They didn't know how Jesus came to this earth and the angels sang out, "Glory to God in the highest and peace on earth." They didn't know that. They didn't know how King Jesus came riding on that donkey in fulfillment of the prophecy of Zechariah, how he came into Jerusalem and the throngs of people were waving palm branches and they were shouting out, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." They didn't know that. You and I do. How many Gentiles did they witness coming into Jerusalem? How many? They certainly didn't know about 3,000 on Pentecost Sunday coming in one day. They didn't see what you and I see. Just look about. This is wonderful. I'm seeing all of you. Just look about yourselves. All Gentiles coming from different backgrounds, claiming Christ to be the King. Look around. We've been getting a lot of new members lately. And NBC is just one tiny church of thousands and thousands of churches. If ever the truth of Psalm 100 needed to be repeated, it needs to be repeated to you and me. Give thanks to the Lord. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. His faithfulness to all generations. I heard the Christian testimony of my grandparents. I heard the testimony of my own parents. I hear the testimony of my son and daughter-in-law, the testimony of my grandchildren. And we all have different family experiences, but we're all part of this church family. And we see God's faithfulness to the generations, even in our body, from one generation to the next. He is faithful. We are called to give praise to the King. And the more we are filled with joy, the more we better be ready to give an account of the hope that's within us. The more we exude joy of the Lord, and I'm not talking about just smiles. You know what I'm talking about. This peace, this inner joy that no matter what happens, that joy can't be taken away. This joy in the Lord, the more we have this joy, the more we surrender to the King, the more joy we have, we better be ready to answer the question, why do you sing? We sing because we belong to the King of Kings, and we are His.